5 years ago, I decided to start the process to migrate to Australia from America. The desire to travel was there for as long as I could remember. It wouldn't be until my late 20s before I could actually afford to travel abroad for the first time. Still, as a kid, I dreamt of having a teleport to escape to wherever I wanted in this world.
Go in that portal.
Oh, hey.
Oops.
I wanted to be an international action hero like James Bond or Indiana Jones. I even considered marrying Carmen Sandiego, if you can believe it. As I grew older, my ambitions became based on reality more than fantasy, and I realized that staying home wouldn't allow me to grow as a person. Now, many dream of starting a new life in the United States. For this reason, I've been asked and critiqued by fellow Americans on why I would leave what many consider to be the best country in the world. Depending on your background, it can be a wonderful country. Unfortunately, it can also be one of the most stressful countries to make a living in. There are so many ways this discussion can turn heated and political, so I'm going to try my best not to bring up the sociopath reality TV star in the room or secret police or anything like that. This might be harder than I think. If you've ever moved to a city you love, you may remember having a feeling the first time you set foot there. You knew right away, this is where I belong. This is where I want to live. After living in many American cities, I never quite had this feeling until I arrived in Brisbane and then eventually Sydney. Even when I was working a job I wasn't too thrilled about, I just felt good waking up every day. While I talk about what I admire about Australia, I want to make awareness of the country's own dark history and present toward Aboriginal populations, the fight for free speech, threats from climate change, just to name a few. Having said that, my thoughts here are just simply from the perspective of a middle-class 32-year-old white dude trying to better himself. America has been in decline since the turn of the 21st century. Some would argue even earlier, but let's start with the last 20 years. While its wealth has greatly increased for a small percentage of the population, so has the government's debt, and wages have remained stagnant for decades, squeezing the middle class and creating generations of families in poverty. Healthcare premiums continue to rise. Higher education is also out of reach for many, limiting citizens to low-paying careers. And this is by design. America is the birthplace of neoliberalism, a way of thinking that strives for the privatization and commodification of every corner of government and crevice of private life. The goal here is to accumulate wealth and capital for the richest population, or those invested in the stock market, which is lifted artificially through federal money injected into the markets, while everyday Americans are left collecting the scraps. All this despite the country risking a depression. The two political parties, known as the Republicans and the Democrats, practice neoliberalism, which is why we have seen very little progress adopting policies such as universal health care, living wages, and affordable education, despite the majority of Americans wanting this. Many politicians in other countries, such as Australia, are also influenced by this economic philosophy and are working to privatize certain sectors as well. Feeling stuck, I wondered if there were any other countries with a different way of thinking. And unfortunately, politicians in Australia and many other countries swear by America's way of doing business and are attempting to implement the same problematic ideals. Still, it takes a lot of effort to reach America's low standards, and a higher quality of life can still be found abroad thanks to affordable healthcare options, paid leave, higher wages, just to name a few benefits. I'm not the only one wanting to exile myself from the US. Countries such as Ghana are offering citizenship paths to Black Americans feeling unwanted in the US. Other Americans find themselves looking to Canada to prevent themselves from going bankrupt under America's healthcare system. Gun violence has also made me think twice about raising a family in America. Having lost a friend to gun violence, I found myself emotionally exhausted of the debate around basic safety precautions. I think I'd rather take my chances getting bit by a shark than some maniac opening fire upon me over a parking space. Australia faced this problem head-on after the Port Arthur massacre. And sure, the opponents were vocal like they are in America, but once strong gun measures were put in place, they pretty much had to swallow it for the most part. For me, changing careers in America was a headache. High-paying jobs do exist in this country, of course. I was working a construction job in the film industry, and while I enjoyed the work, the environment was toxic. I finally had enough and walked away, but soon found myself facing an unprecedented wage gap. The minimum wage stands between $7.25 and $12 an hour, and most jobs don't even pay more than $15 an hour. Even then, be prepared to fight for this amount, as your employer will want justification for even paying this, despite it not being a lot of money in the first place. Eventually, I found a job at $20 an hour, but still had to pay taxes on this and maintain enough hours to make it worthwhile. On the contrary, Australia's 2020 minimum wage is close to $20 an hour across all industries, with many employees offering much more. I could start an entry-level job in any industry on a higher wage than what's offered in the US. As a carpenter there, I can expect to make between 40 and 90 grand depending on the job. And sure, Australia is an expensive country. High taxes, high cost of electricity, and other costs can be argued, but your cost of living depends on your lifestyle. After my 1-year working holiday visa, I personally found my cost of living to be lower than the States. I cook a lot, and being an introvert, I don't frequent bars or many restaurants. Even in Sydney, it's possible to live a frugal student lifestyle while enjoying many of the free activities Australia has to offer, such as the many beaches, hiking spots, and festivals. So while I may find myself paying higher for goods and trade, I'm getting a higher standard of living thanks to better healthcare and more time off. Despite my focus on building a solid career, money isn't everything. It's the environment that makes the true difference. I personally found America is overworked, angry, and frankly, dark. I mean, those Grand Theft Auto games were supposed to be satire, right? I want to do what's best for my homeland, and I have fought for what I believed in the streets, the voting booth, through conversations with family and neighbors. But at the end of the day, I have one life to live, and I want to enjoy my youth through new experiences and new ideas. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of things to like about America. However, I can only really indulge when I have the rare chance to take a vacation and see its wonderful state parks, vibrant cities, stellar entertainment. But why limit my enjoyment to a few vacations when I can wake up every day to the sound of the kookaburra? I love those little guys. You can feed them bacon. Seriously, I love the sounds of birds in Australia. That's enough to make me go. Even those scary, ominous crow sounds from those hell nights. And I really want to become a better surfer, too. Now, I can't deny many other countries face similar problems to America, such as racism and police brutality. Australia certainly shares this problem in addition to its own issues. There is no way to run from our faults as a species, but perhaps through keeping an open mind about visiting other countries and befriending migrants, we'll be able to learn from our home country's mistakes and carry the spirit of what we love about them. If all else fails, maybe in a few years we'll be able to escape from Earth. Thank you for watching and welcome to my channel. You can call me Will. This is my first YouTube video, so feel free to leave any feedback or hate mail in the comments below. Until next time.